My husband called me his sick cousin from out of town in front of his mistresses. He had no idea I'd secretly built a $25 million empire. My name is Margaret, and at 32, I felt my world crumbling, even though from the outside, everything looked perfect. Ethan, my husband, was 3 years older, and we had built a life together, or so I thought. We met young, fresh out of college, both brimming with grand plans. He dreamed of conquering the tech world with innovative software, while I envisioned creating stunning designer jewelry and clothing. When Ethan first shared his vision for TechFlow Solutions, a company meant to revolutionize corporate solutions, I became his biggest cheerleader. I believed in him with my whole heart. My own ambitions, the sketches filling my notebooks, the fabrics I dreamed of draping and stitching, all of that took a back seat. Back then, I didn't see it as a sacrifice. It felt like our shared journey, a temporary detour from my path to help accelerate his. We spent countless nights brainstorming. I'd stay up until dawn handling administrative tasks, building rudimentary websites, or just keeping him fueled with coffee and encouragement. I poured my modest inheritance from my grandmother into his fledgling company, believing it was an investment in our future. I vividly remember those early days, the cramped apartment we rented, instant noodles, and the sheer thrill of every small victory. Ethan would turn to me, his eyes blazing with triumph, and say, "We did it, Meg! We did it!" Those words, those shared moments of struggle and triumph, cemented my belief that we were an unbreakable team. But as TechFlow Solutions grew, so did the distance between us. The small office expanded into a sprawling corporate headquarters. Instant noodles gave way to gourmet catered lunches. Our tiny apartment was replaced by a sleek penthouse overlooking the city, and somewhere along that upward climb, Ethan changed. The man who once acknowledged our shared achievements became obsessed with his own success. His victories became his accomplishments, and my contributions, once valued, faded into invisibility. He started working longer hours, but the passion that once drove him seemed less about the work and more about the status it brought. When he was home, he was often distracted, his attention fragmented. The small gestures of affection, the spontaneous hugs, the inside jokes, slowly, imperceptibly vanished. I tried to bridge the growing gap. I'd ask about his day, offer suggestions, or simply try to spark a conversation about something other than work, but his responses grew dismissive, often accompanied by a patronizing sigh or a vague, non-committal grunt. One evening, as I tried again to talk about weekend plans, he didn't even look up from his phone. "Ethan, I'm talking to you," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. Yeah, something about the weekend," he mumbled, still typing. "You're not even listening. When was the last time you actually talked to me?" He finally looked up, his eyes cold with irritation. "Meg, I'm exhausted. I've got a lot going on. Can we talk about this later?" Later never came. He began hosting colleagues and clients for lavish dinners at our home, and I, the dutiful wife, played the perfect hostess, ensuring everything was flawless. It was during these evenings that the true extent of his disregard for me became painfully clear. He'd introduce me as my wife, Margaret, almost as an afterthought before launching into effusive praise for his male colleagues. He'd make offhand, cutting remarks disguised as humor about my hobbies, my love for fashion, my old dreams. "Margaret," he'd chuckle to a room full of tech titans, "still thinks she's going to design clothes. Bless her heart." His friends would laugh along, and I'd force a smile, my heart sinking with each barbed comment. The pain was immense, a silent humiliation I endured with practiced grace. But the worst came one evening when one of his investors, an older man with cold eyes, asked Ethan point blank, "What does your wife do? Does she work?" Ethan laughed. That same laugh that once made my heart sing now cut like a knife. "Margaret? Oh, she's a homemaker, creative type, always sewing and sketching, expensive hobbies." He winked at the investor. "But I need her. Someone's got to keep the house running while the real money's being made." I felt the blood rush to my face, but I kept smiling. "Hobbies," I whispered. He chipped away at my self-worth, brick by painful brick. I began to believe his narrative, that my dreams were childish, irrelevant, and that my only value lay in supporting his grand ambitions. The woman who once saw herself as an equal partner, capable of building her own empire, was slowly fading into the shadow of his towering ego. The turning point came quietly, as profound shifts often do. I overheard Ethan one evening on the phone, speaking dismissively about me to one of his investors. "Margaret?" he scoffed. "Oh, she's just around. My biggest support system, of course," he added in a transparent attempt to soften the blow, but the damage was done. "Just around," like a piece of furniture easily overlooked. In that moment, something inside me snapped. The Margaret who had sacrificed, who had faded into his shadow, decided she'd had enough. I remembered the fierce ambition I once held, the vibrant designs that used to fill my mind. I remembered me. It was time to reclaim her. But this time, I didn't announce my intentions. I chose to build in silence. I started small, sketching late at night after Ethan had gone to bed. Or so I thought. I researched fabric suppliers, manufacturers, and marketing strategies. I used a portion of my small personal savings, a separate account Ethan didn't know about, to purchase my first bolt of fabric, a luxurious silk I'd always dreamed of working with. I settled on a name that was a quiet nod to my own identity, but distinct enough to not be immediately tied to me. Emster Fashion. The MR was a subtle play on my initials. Margaret Ryan. A quiet rebellion, a whisper of my true self. For the next 18 months, I lived a meticulously orchestrated double life. By day, I was the supportive wife, keeping Ethan's life running smoothly, attending his corporate events, playing my part. By night, and often in the pre-dawn hours, I was the CEO of MR Fashion. My small home office, once a forgotten space, became my sanctuary, filled with design sketches, fabric swatches, and the hum of my sewing machine. I learned to manage my time with near-military precision, stealing moments to respond to emails, oversee production, and connect with potential clients. I launched MR Fashion's online presence under a pseudonym, building the brand from the ground up, one exquisite piece at a time. Ethan, consumed by his own world of algorithms and venture capital, remained utterly oblivious. He'd occasionally comment on my late nights, attributing them to some new hobby I'd picked up, usually with a dismissive wave of his hand. He even, to my seething fury, used his popular podcast, Tech Leaders Live, to mock women entrepreneurs, especially in frivolous industries like fashion. "They think they can run a business," he'd snicker, "with a few pretty dresses and a social media account. It's cute, really." Every word was a dagger, but I swallowed the pain, letting it fuel my resolve. His condescension was my quiet motivation, a constant reminder of what I was fighting for. My success would be my loudest rebuttal. But the most painful moment came the night I overheard him talking to his best friend Jacob on the phone. I was grabbing a glass of water when I heard his voice from his study. "Honestly, Jake, sometimes I don't know why I even married her," Ethan laughed. "She's become so predictable, boring. All she does is sit at home and play with fabrics like a kid." "Maybe you should talk to her," Jacob suggested. "Talk about what? She wouldn't get it. She's living in some fantasy about being a designer. She doesn't even know what real business is." I had to brace myself against the wall to keep from collapsing. The man I loved, supported, and sacrificed everything for was speaking about me like I was a burden. The facade shattered on a Tuesday afternoon. I decided to surprise Ethan with lunch at his office, a rare gesture on my part, hoping to rekindle some warmth in our increasingly cold marriage. I breezed past Sophia, his usually efficient secretary, who looked uncharacteristically flustered. "He's in a meeting, Mrs. R," she stammered, blocking my path, but I heard muffled laughter from Ethan's private office, and it didn't sound like a business meeting. Pushing past her, I opened the door. What I saw froze the blood in my veins. Ethan was there, his arms wrapped around a woman I didn't recognize, her head resting on his chest. They sprang apart, startled, but it was Sophia's next words that truly gutted me. With tears in her eyes, Sophia confessed, She's pregnant, Mrs. R. And Ethan, he's been telling everyone you're just his sick cousin from out of town." "Sick cousin?" The words echoed in my ears. The final, cruel betrayal. He wasn't just cheating on me, wasn't just expecting a child with another woman. He was systematically erasing my identity, reducing me to a convenient, pitiful lie. I turned to him, and he didn't even try to explain. Instead, he sighed, as if I were an annoying inconvenience. "Meg, it's not what you think." "Not what I think." My voice was eerily calm. "So you didn't tell people I'm your sick cousin. This woman isn't pregnant with your child." He looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that chilled me. Relief. Relief that the secret was out. "Listen, Meg," he said, his voice taking on the same patronizing tone he used with clients. "We both know our marriage has been dead for years. You're not growing with me. Samantha understands my world, my ambitions." "Samantha," I repeated, glancing at the young woman who avoided my gaze. "And how long has Samantha been understanding you?" 2 years, he said without hesitation. "And before you make a scene, think about what you're getting out of this. You've lived in my house, spent my money, and what do you have to show for it? A few homemade outfits? Years of sacrifice, quiet support, and unwavering belief in him reduced to ash. It wasn't just infidelity. It was the obliteration of my existence in our shared life." I turned, walked out of that office, and filed for divorce the next day. The courtroom buzzed with hushed tension, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. Ethan sat across from me, a smirk playing on his lips, occasionally exchanging knowing glances with his lawyer. He clearly expected to see a broken woman, penniless and desperate, ready to accept whatever scraps he deigned to offer. His arrogance was palpable, a thick, suffocating cloud that filled the room. He had no idea. He genuinely believed he held all the cards, that I was merely an appendage to his success, now discarded with nothing but the clothes on my back. My own lawyer, Mr. Davis, a calm and collected man with a reputation for quiet brilliance, caught my eye and gave me an encouraging nod. I took a deep breath, bracing for the inevitable onslaught of his condescension. Ethan's lawyer began outlining his client's generous offer. A modest settlement, far less than half our shared assets, and paltry alimony that would barely cover rent for a year. He spoke of my lack of significant contribution to TechFlow Solutions, painting me as a mere housewife who'd lived off her husband's genius. Ethan nodded along, his smug grin widening, occasionally letting out a short, derisive chuckle that grated on my nerves. He was relishing this, reveling in what he perceived as my public humiliation. Then it was our turn. Mr. Davis stood, his voice clear and resonant, cutting through the smug atmosphere Ethan had created. While Mrs. Margaret Ryan did indeed provide invaluable support during the formative stages of TechFlow Solutions, he began, her true entrepreneurial spirit, it seems, was merely biding its time. Ethan's smirk faltered slightly, replaced by a flicker of confusion. My client, Mrs. Ryan, Mr. Davis continued, his gaze sweeping the courtroom, has, for the past 18 months, been the sole owner and creative director of a wildly successful fashion enterprise. A ripple of whispers spread through the courtroom. Ethan leaned forward, a crease deepening on his brow. Operating under the name MR Fashion, Mr. Davis declared. This company has, in a remarkably short time, established itself as a major player in the luxury fashion market, both domestically and internationally. My lawyer then presented the evidence. He laid out neatly organized folders filled with financial statements, market analyses, and independent valuation reports. The judge, a stoic woman who'd presided over countless divorce proceedings, took the first document, and her eyes, usually impassive, widened almost imperceptibly as she read. She passed it to Ethan's lawyer, who snatched it with a look of disbelief. As he scanned the numbers, the color drained from his face. He handed the document to Ethan, who ripped it from his grasp with an impatient gesture, a look of utter bewilderment spreading across his face. His eyes darted across the pages, searching for a flaw, a mistake, something to discredit what he was seeing. The courtroom was silent, save for the rustle of papers and the soft clicks of cameras from the few journalists present. Then Mr. Davis delivered the knockout blow. Your Honor, he stated, his voice carrying quiet authority, based on comprehensive independent valuations, Mr. Fashion, wholly owned and operated by Mrs. Margaret Ryan, is currently valued at a staggering $25 million. The words hung in the air like a hammer striking Ethan's carefully constructed world. The courtroom erupted in shocked gasps and frenzied whispers. Journalists scrambled to capture the moment. Ethan, sitting across from me, froze. His eyes, which had been frantically scanning the documents, locked onto me, wide with a mix of shock, betrayal, and dawning realization. The derisive laughter was gone, replaced by a deathly pallor. His jaw slackened slightly, and he seemed to shrink in his chair, as if trying to disappear. He looked like a man who'd just seen a ghost, or perhaps, for the first time, truly seen me. The judge, maintaining her composure, cleared her throat. Given Mrs. Ryan's substantial and independent financial success, she stated firmly, it appears the financial aspects of this divorce will be quite different from what was initially anticipated. Ethan was utterly speechless, his face a mask of disbelief. The man who had dismissed me, mocked my dreams, and systematically belittled my intelligence was now confronted with undeniable proof of my silent, monumental success. He had completely overlooked the very strength he thought he'd extinguished. The irony was exquisite. I watched Ethan, still frozen in his seat, his face a contorted mess of shock and realization. The laughter, the scorn, the dismissiveness, all of it had evaporated, leaving behind the hollow shell of a man I once knew. What I felt wasn't triumph, not exactly, but rather a profound sense of vindication, a quiet satisfaction that resonated deep in my soul. I hadn't sought revenge. I had simply built something beautiful from the ashes of his neglect. My lawyer gave me a subtle nudge. "Mrs. Ryan," he whispered, "we can now pursue a significantly larger share of the marital assets, given the circumstances." I looked at Ethan again, truly looked at him, and saw not the powerful tech mogul he pretended to be, but a small, insecure man whose world had just been irrevocably shaken. The thought of fighting for more of his money, of dragging this out, felt pointless. It wouldn't undo the years I'd spent on him or heal the emotional wounds. My company, MR Fashion, was my true victory, my freedom. "No, Mr. Davis," I said, my voice calm but resolute. "Let's stick to the original divorce terms, the ones Ethan's lawyer proposed regarding the marital assets." A wave of surprise rippled through the courtroom, and even Mr. Davis looked momentarily stunned. Ethan's lawyer, who had begun to rally, slumped back in his chair, utterly confounded. The judge, however, seemed to understand. She gave a slight nod, a faint smile touching her lips. My dignity was worth more than any amount of money Ethan could offer. My focus was on my company, my future, not on dissecting the past or squeezing every last cent from a man who no longer mattered. I wanted to walk away clean, unburdened by further entanglements, with my head held high. The final papers were signed swiftly, almost in a blur. Ethan managed a weak, almost pitiful glance in my direction, but there was no fire in it, only the embers of a shattered ego. I didn't acknowledge it. My gaze was fixed on the path ahead, illuminated by the bright future I'd forged for myself. As I walked out of that courtroom, a lightness I hadn't felt in years enveloped me. The air outside felt crisper, the sky bluer, the city pulsing with possibility. I was finally free. 6 months after the divorce, my life was like the fabrics I loved, intricate, vibrant, and woven from threads of my own choosing. MR Fashion continued to thrive. A successful showing at Fashion Weeks led to a partnership offer from a major international retailer, allowing me to scale production and open my first flagship store downtown. My sketches, once hidden in notebooks, now graced runways in Paris and New York, and my collections were featured in magazines from Vogue to Elle. I moved into a new apartment, airy, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the river, every corner reflecting my taste and independence. My days were full, but I now relished every challenge, every decision I made. My team at MR Fashion became my new family, talented, passionate people who shared my vision and inspired me to keep pushing forward. One evening, as I worked on a new collection, I received an email from Sophia. After that day in Ethan's office, she'd quit and started a new career with a nonprofit helping women entrepreneurs. She thanked me for inspiring her and apologized for not speaking up sooner. I replied warmly, inviting her for coffee, not out of pity, but from a genuine desire to hear about her journey. As for Ethan, I heard TechFlow Solutions was struggling. Without my organizational acumen and emotional support, which he'd taken for granted, his company began losing investors. Rumors swirled that Samantha had left him, leaving him alone with their child and a reputation tarnished by our public divorce. I felt no schadenfreude, only a faint sadness for the man who could have been different if he'd valued what he had. Revenge, I realized, isn't about destroying someone else's life. Revenge is rising from the ashes, shining brighter than ever, and living in a way that every step you take is proof of your strength. I didn't just survive, I flourished. And as I stood in my atelier, surrounded by silks and sketches, my phone buzzing with messages from clients and friends, I knew this was only the beginning. My next move was international expansion for MR Fashion, and I was ready. For the first time, I felt not like someone's wife or someone's shadow, but Margaret Ryan, a woman who built an empire on her own terms. Did you like the story? Write your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next interesting story. See you tomorrow.